Hey there, and welcome to Retirement Reimagined. I'm Tiffany Nyiri, Senior Living Specialist, and this is the podcast where we flip the script on senior living. Whether you're a retiree ready to take on a new adventure or just curious about how to make the most of your golden years, you're in the right place. Join me and our amazing expert guests as we dive into everything from hitting the road in an RV, getting your financial ducks in a row, exploring the perks of a reverse mortgage, or just figuring out how to link that smartphone to your car. We're here to inspire, inform, and give you practical tips to live your best retired life. So buckle up, tune in, and let's reimagine what retirement can truly be. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. We have Dimitry Farberov on here, and he is going to tell us all about generational wealth, how to keep the money in the family and strategies behind that, as well as how to avoid some mistakes. So we are going to welcome Dimitry, and he's going to tell us a little bit about himself.
Hi, Tiffany. Thank you very much for hosting me on this podcast. Always a pleasure to talk to an audience and hopefully learn a thing or two and perhaps pass along a couple of pearls of wisdom along the way. Um, as you mentioned, I'm Dimitri, and I've been doing this for about 18 years now professionally. But really, I've been investing personal assets since I was 13 years old and learning along the way through many, many, many mistakes. And I think that's how you grow. This is a passion and a calling for me, and I've over the years professionally have grown practice to about 175 million in assets under management. I've recently partnered with a company called Compound Planning, which is the second fastest growing investment advisory firm in the country. They just surpassed $3 billion in assets, and they have a really, truly unique approach to wealth management, which is leading with technology and transparency and building the next generation of wealth management. And so I found that to be very powerful for my clients, but also for multi-generational planning as well, because many of my clients are retirees. They want to make sure that their assets pass on to their family members, and we can talk about the tools and tricks and tips to do that. But ultimately, it's about bringing that next generation and perhaps the generation after into the process. And really, you do that with technology and education.
And yes, I'm so happy that you mentioned the education part, because it's a lot of people that may be afraid to raise their hands and say, hey, I would love to learn more, because they think maybe they don't have enough, or they're the first of their generation to actually open up and go, this is something that I want to do. And I mean, who is your avatar? Who can you help?
Sure, absolutely. So I work primarily with tech executives and retirees that have complex financial situations or are building wealth at a very fast pace that can become complex very quickly. And my job is to simplify that complexity and make it understandable, and that we make prudent decisions that are not rooted in emotions, because finance is the most emotional topic of any in our lives. And so bringing it down to the basics, whether you're an executive making a couple $1 million a year or a founder about to sell a business, the same principles really apply. It's how do we create transparency, remove the emotion, and help you think through a long-term perspective, because the decisions that we make today will impact not only our lives 15 and 30 years down the line, but the lives of multi-generations, depending on the caliber of wealth. So that's really the key, is to really help clients think through a long-term vision of what their assets can accomplish, both for themselves, but also the legacy that they're looking to leave behind.
Very good, very good. And then just a little bit on your background. You're a seasoned financial advisor, and you've got multiple accreditations, licenses. Tell us a little bit just about that real quick. I think
Sure.
I missed that part at the beginning.
Sure, absolutely. So, a CFA and a CFP. The CFA is a Chartered Financial Analyst designation. It's a 3-year exam. It's
Oh,
statistically one of the most difficult exams of any industry to achieve. And I did that while having three young kids. So I'm very proud of that. Studying at 4 a.m. in the morning was not easy.
Yes, you
Uh,
definitely need a
and
little clap for that.
and that's more of an analytical designation and helps you understand the analytical part of finance, and the CFP, the Certified Financial Planning designation, is more of a practical application of some of the principles in a CFA. How do you take the very complex and really bring it down to an audience and make it practical?
Very good, very good. So again, you mentioned there's emotions, there's behavioral. You also mentioned something really cool that hadn't gone on my mind. When we are preparing to retire, we want to sell our business possibly. Maybe we don't have children that are taking that over. So we would have to plan not only for retirement, but selling a business and the complexities that come behind that.
Absolutely. And oftentimes at the time that we actually start taking the practical steps to make the decisions is already too late. We want to be planning 5 years in advance. So if you have a business or you have an illiquid asset that at some point will go through a liquidity event, planning well in advance from a tax perspective, from an estate perspective, making sure the assets are properly located. If you have, you mentioned in this instance, if there are no potential inheritors of that business, where do you want those assets to go? Where do you want those assets to be in 30 years? What do you want them to do for you? How will they impact your life? And all those answers will define how to structure that sale in the most appropriate tax efficient way. I once read an article about very wealthy real estate mogul, not going to mention him, president, and who pays very little taxes, right? And it's really because they with real estate you have the ability to structure assets in a way that are extremely tax efficient. So understanding the tax laws and the tax code really is a power that you can deploy for yourself to create powerful advantages. So that's really, but the key is having that transparency. So often what happens with business owners is they're so focused on their actual business that they don't have time to focus on the actual finances, which are going to allow them to live the life that they're working so hard to achieve. And sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's lack of time, but the combination of these factors is so important. And very often there's so many different dynamics within a family. Sometimes the business owner is as a spouse that isn't necessarily involved with the business. Sometimes it's family that's not involved. Sometimes it is. So the complexities are huge, and the complexities create an action quite often.
Yes, and sometimes, like you said, we get caught up in the business and we need to raise our hand and we need to get a team around us. I mean, me, I work in the lending world, so a lot of times I am teaming up with someone like yourself and the client, and we're all around Robin, going, okay, what are the tools that I provide? What are the tools you provide? And how can we just strengthen this so well that people are woo woo shouting from the rooftops of that the power that they just felt in their retirement? Because a lot of people, I work with a lot of people that can't afford to go to the movies in their retirement. And they're sitting on $1.7 million of assets in their property. Um, they just didn't learn um, the the rules. But we as normal traditional people don't know what you know. So we have to ask for help. We have to hire because, the wealthy real estate moguls, they're not doing anything wrong. They're just educated enough to use the system.
Absolutely.
That's all.
And they have the ability to spend the resources in advance, right? The biggest challenge that I found is these resources quite often cost quite a bit of money,
Mm.
right? So if you have an illiquid business and you're living not necessarily living paycheck to paycheck, but every $5,000-$10,000 is important, and to get a team of advisors that will give you the advice that you need in advance before there's a liquidity event might cost you $50,000 that you don't want to spend unless you see the benefits immediately. So one of the benefits that come with working with me is that the way that our industry charges from a fiduciary standpoint is generally assets under management. So if there's no liquidity, frankly, I'm likely not going to be able to charge you. But so the advice that I give you is to help create a pathway for that liquidity so that down the road, there's an opportunity for me to earn a living. But in the meantime, there's a lot of advice that's essentially pro bono. But regardless of whether you pay for that advice or whether it comes at, at a pro bono cost, the key is, like you said, having the advisors is so critical to making the right decisions.
And I'm glad you bring that up because a lot of people will think, okay, it takes money to make money, and I don't have 50,000 up front. However, when I give advice, just because of what I do, my advice is free. But then we need to bring in someone like you. And again, you're sometimes with the understanding that you may be earning the right to manage their assets, you're going to give advice pro bono and put them on a pathway. I love a pathway, little yellow brick road to the rainbow. And um, I don't charge for that. Understanding that, yes, hopefully in the future, I do get to help them manage the equity in their home. You want to manage their assets that they are either going to build or that they currently have or will have once they sell their business and do their full retirement plan. So that's cool. That's really, really good of you. Let's see. I've got a couple notes here.
Sure.
Estate and legacy planning for generational wealth. Um, I'm guessing asking questions and then just setting that up based upon tax codes and
Sure.
trusts and
Sure. Well, it depends on there are different types of estate planning strategies that clients need, right? So if you have a basic financial landscape, a basic living trust with the healthcare directives, pour over wills, and so on, the limited power of attorneys. I say it's basic, it's critical to have, particularly in the state of California. I've seen far too many people take it for granted, pass away, and then it goes through probate, which in California is an arm and a leg. I'm sure you know this,
I
working in real estate.
yeah.
But when you have complexities around a business, when you have partnerships in that business, when it's those so ownership is not solely in the family, right? There are complexities that need to be worked around, buy-sell agreements, et cetera. And then when you have multi-generational wealth potential, so if you're above estate exclusions right now, you're going to have a lot of potential tax liability down the line. So how do you plan for those exclusions and or that liability rather? And right now that the exclusion for a family is around 27 million, but that can drop with the political changes that are on the horizon. It was projected to drop at the end of 2025 to about 13 million. And who knows what happens 5, 10 years down the line? Nobody knows, right? The key is projecting into the future. You might be at 10 million today, but your wealth is projected to grow to $35 million. So what can you do today from a planning perspective that includes trusts and estates and so on to be able to park assets outside of the estate, utilizing these exemptions while they exist, right? While we know what they are, and to either freeze the estate from growing within your estate, or altogether moving assets outside of the estate that you don't necessarily rely upon. Now there are complexities because those assets might be the income generators that you're relying upon for retirement, right? So you have to understand all those complexities. But these are very, very important. And when you have multi generations and you have family dynamics, emotions become a critical piece of the puzzle, right? How do you ensure that families are able to communicate and there's consistent kind of understanding about what what these strategies are intended to do. And oftentimes there's disagreement, right? So you have to have a impartial third party helping navigate the pieces. But bottom line is, if you don't do those things, and the worst happens, right? The unexpected happens. It can create chaos. I've seen it happen, break apart families, and ultimately, the last thing you want to do is die with an estate that's above the exclusion and be forcing your family to pay tens of
Millions of
millions of
dollars,
dollars
yes.
in taxes uh, on frankly you don't have the liquidity for. So how do you don't want to be in a position to sell down assets. You see it all the time. Right behind me is Beverly Hills. Half of these properties are owned by families that have bought these in the 1980s. They may have bought an apartment building for $1 or $2 million and it's worth $100 million today. They don't have the sophistication they need. Their kids are begging their parents to do what's right. But if they pass away and you have $100 million apartment building and you have a $25 million tax due, what do? Right? Especially if it's a recession. Do you want to be selling
Yeah.
an apartment building at that time when everyone knows why you're selling that building? So
Yeah.
these are the things that we want to plan for well in advance.
Yes, and the people that strategize look for that opportunity of someone that didn't take care of business before passing away. They didn't have the right um, they didn't have the right team surrounding them. And you work on a little bit more higher level than a lot of the people, the majority, let's say, because a lot of people don't live in Beverly Hills, and a lot of people don't have $100,000 apartment, building apartment in general, even. So we are talking maybe someone, this gal that we talked before recording, she is sitting on a property, 1.7 million, dilapidated, like it needs work, and she doesn't see it because she's lived in it her whole life. And
Right.
this poor girl, she can't go to the movies on her retirement, like she can't even go with her girlfriends. So she's got this asset. I mean, it's not a lot compared to some of the people that you work with, but it is definitely a lot for a lot of people.
Yeah.
What I personally, we're doing a reverse mortgage just so that she can get some money to do the work. We're setting up a beautiful line of credit with a growth factor, not your traditional line of credit, and we're giving her an extra $1,000 a month. Her life is going to change, and we're not even using 30% of her equity to do all of this, change this woman's life. We're talking $400,000.
That's powerful. That's powerful because I think most of the time, most of our lives we spend earning our capital, right? Saving for retirement if we're doing all the right things, but we're working for our money. At some point, that money has to work for us, right? And so if you have a portfolio, an investment portfolio, whether it's 500,000 or a couple of $1 million, the reality is it's not likely enough for what you want to accomplish, right? And so many of my clients, their entire equity outside of their investment portfolio is in their home, right? And knowing that you have the flexibility around tapping into that home's equity, right, is very powerful, particularly in times of economic stress. The last thing you want to be doing is eating into your portfolio's principal
Hmm.
when you have access to other capital. And so all of these factors, including the one you just mentioned in the reverse mortgage, done creatively, done intelligently, done in the context of a financial plan, um, is all part of the puzzle, right? Because our lives, I tell people when they retire, whether it's 65, 70, or whenever that case may be, that's the beginning of the next chapter of their lives. And that chapter will likely be the most complex chapter of their lives, from a health standpoint, from a family dynamic standpoint, from a what do I do with my time standpoint. And so the emotions really are such a big factor. Anxiety is such a big factor. It impacts all of us, but it's that period of time where we have the most time on our hands. And so if we're also privy to some of the challenges of the noise and uncertainty, especially if we don't have enough or we don't feel we have enough. I'll tell you, Tiffany, so many of my clients, whether they range from, I have clients that are in that 500,000 range and I have clients that are in the $30 million range. Across the board, they all feel like they don't have enough. Right. And one of the big misconceptions about retirement is that we think that we can just in retirement we'll just reduce our spending, right? And because I'm not gonna work, I'm not gonna travel as much. I'm right. I just go to the grocery, to the movies once a month or whatnot. But the reality is expenses are generally higher in retirement due to healthcare and other reasons than they are during our working lives. And so being prepared for that and knowing that you have multiple sources of capital is very, very powerful.
Well, and the maintenance on yourself, the maintenance on your home, the maintenance does not stop just because you retired. It doesn't know you retired. So the roof is still going to age. The air conditionings are still going to age. And like you said, you've got people like my girl, $1.7 million equity. These loans can do a $20 million home. You're just going to be capped at a certain amount. But a lot of people have in mind that the reverse mortgage is for people that need it. Oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful strategy. It's tax-free money. It's so cool. But again, that's for a whole different podcast. The top three pieces of advice I would love to hear from you about securing financial freedom in retirement. Maybe top three.
Sure. I would say I'm going to give you a fourth
Okay.
that you should do before the top three. One is start early. Start early. I think that one is, I mean, for some of us, it's too late to do that. But I would say, as much as you can, build multiple streams of income, right? Or sources of income, whether it's borrowing against an asset, as you said, or income that works for you that you've been able to build and accumulate over time. There's liquid portfolios, right? Retirement accounts and so on. There's rental properties that you can acquire over time, or small businesses that you can acquire over time. But that's important. Be very strategic about withdrawals and taxes, because when you have multiple streams of income, hopefully, every single stream of income is taxed differently. And so understanding how to properly streamline and strategize which income source do you draw on first to ensure that you're not taking from inefficient tax sources all at once that impact your healthcare costs or whatever the case may be, is very, very important. And then I think the one that's often forgotten is protect against risks that are either known or unknown, right? And the earlier you start protecting against some of those risks, the better you are, because let's face it, life happens while we're otherwise making plans. And so if you can protect against long-term care, potential long-term care event well in advance, and there are a lot of ways to do that in a intelligent way. We can talk about it on another podcast, but whether it's longevity risk, which is I think the most important one, which is we think we're across the board. Most of my clients say, I don't think I'm going to live past 85 or 90. The reality is many of us are going to live to 100 or 105 or 110. And if you're not properly protecting against that risk, it's going to be your number one risk, or the risk of your kids or grandkids that will, potentially support you. Healthcare costs are going up, right? I mentioned long-term care. If we're married, a couple living into our 80s, the probability is that at least one of us is going to have a long-term care event, right? In our 80s, and when that happens, that's another $150,000 to $200,000 a year in annual expenses. Where's that money going to come from? Could be a reverse mortgage, could be a portfolio. But if you plan well in advance, you can buy life insurance that has long-term care coverage provisions that you can tap into and ensure that you don't eat away at your savings, so that you can pass on a legacy. And ultimately, market volatility, right? The last 30 years that we've seen in the market, whether it's the stock market or the real estate market, is very unlikely to continue for the next 10, 20 years the way it has in the past. And then we can talk for hours as to why that is. But um, being diversified is very, very important to be able to ride out that volatility. And that diversification includes public equities, stocks and so on, but also includes bonds and includes other assets that are capable of having a different type of correlation to the economy. And that's very important because, as I mentioned, emotions drive our decisions. And more often than not, especially when we don't have trusted advisors, we make poor decisions at the worst possible time. So have trusted advisors, back to the original point, be diversified, have multiple streams of income, and protect against risks. And starting early, I think that's probably five, but those are really the top three focus areas.
And early, I mean, 20s, when you start a career, you should absolutely have a financial advisor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the biggest challenge is that most financial advisors will not work with 20-year-olds in the way that they need to be worked on. Sometimes it's 20 minutes of advice can change someone's life if they follow through. So I'm happy to chat with absolutely anyone pro bono. If you're a 20-year-old listening to a retirement podcast, feel free to reach out. If you've got kids or grandkids that you say, hey, just talk to him, he might be able to put you on the right pathway. I'm happy to do so. But for your kids and grandkids, to be able to set up small retirement accounts or small college savings accounts when they're born, can go such a long way. And I see it in real life. I've been depositing $100 a month, $200 a month to my kids' 529 accounts, and before you know it, they're at $25,000, right? So these things are often taken for granted. And for my first child, I delayed 3 years. I procrastinated. I was telling all my clients what to do. I wasn't doing it myself, right? As I was busy, right, working on my own business and so on. 3 years means a lot in the span of 18 years.
Yes, compound interest.
Compound interest, compound planning.
All right. To wrap it up, any closing besides what we just did?
I would say, just to summarize everything, is start early, plan wisely, have trusted advisors in your path, to help you on your journey, and ultimately, whatever it takes to remove emotion out of money is going to put you on the pathway to success.
Well, yeah, because
whatever that might be.
Yes. And the news unfortunately gets people riled up, and then they call their advisors, are like, sell, and no, let's not do that. Hold on. And you've got to reel back people. So yeah, don't listen to the news. Listen to your advisor.
100%. I mean, we can go on this track for a while, but the reality is, the only certainty in the financial markets is uncertainty. And as you pointed out, there's so much noise out there, and the noise is intended to create chaos and create ratings and so on, because that sells. Quick anecdote: I was looking at headlines, newspaper headlines of these experts, so to speak, from 2020, and what they recommended clients do. Not their clients, somebody else's clients, but they're recommending through media headlines what someone ought to do when the market is crashing. This is March of 2020. If you followed those pundits and the fear that was created by those headlines, you would have missed out on a generational investment opportunity, right? And every time there's chaos, right, there's a lot of uncertainty today in the market. If you go online, you will find experts, so to speak, experts that are telling you what you ought to do, and they have no idea about your personal financial situation. And 9 times out of 10, their advice is not meant for you; it's meant for ratings, and that's the most important part. Is tune that out. Hire someone to tune that in, but you tune that out. Enjoy the life that you've earned. Enjoy your family and your kids and so on. Travel and enjoy the finances the savings that you've created for yourself, and let other professionals do the rest.
It's so good that you said that too. I tell my clients, I am your new Google. because I will answer the questions based on you. So you're more than welcome to Google, but I'm going to tell you the reality. So thank you for that, Dimitry. I appreciate your knowledge and sharing what you know, and bringing sometimes the unknown or the complicated back down to reality. So if anybody has any financial questions, I know a lot of people don't understand long-term care. We might have to invite you back just to talk about that, because a lot of people think that their Medi-Cal is going to pay for someone to come in their home and take care of them. And it's not. And that is the reality. And if your children are not those type of children, we better figure out something else for you.
Yeah. And sometimes there are no good solutions, right? If you haven't started planning early, and if you don't have the savings that would create the ability to pay for some of these items, then it becomes a challenge. But yes, I'm more than happy to have that conversation.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. Any questions? All Dimitry's information will be with links down below in the podcast and on YouTube. And Dimitry, if you want to just shout out the best way to get a hold of you, just so we do have it on video as well, please do.
Sure. I would say LinkedIn is a great source of information for me. I make videos, try to post them once or twice a week. I probably do about 10 engaging posts on financial topics and financial planning and investments. Might not be for everybody, but certainly you can access me. And then if you're not on LinkedIn, which some of my clients are not, just send me a note, Dimitry.Farberov@compoundplanning.com.
Thank you, Dimitry. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tiffany. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks for tuning in to Retirement Reimagined. I hope today's episode gave you some great tips to elevate your retirement. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you found our discussion helpful, please leave a review. It helps others find the podcast too. Curious about how to unlock new financial opportunities in retirement? I'd love to chat and explore how we can make your golden years even brighter. Until next time, I'm Tiffany Nyiri. Keep reimagining.